Our mission today, it's focused on maybe the single most influential handbook ever on human interaction. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost impossible to overstate the impact of this book. It came out way back in 1936 originally.
But it's still foundational.
It is, and the context is key, though. He didn't actually set out to write some blockbuster bestseller. It wasn't about marketing. It really started as a textbook for his courses, for adults' courses on effective speaking, and crucially, human relations.
And that's the real hook today, isn't it? We're not just reviewing some old advice. We're pulling out those core principles, and maybe more importantly, the really detailed real-world stories, the anecdotes that prove why these methods still have so much power.
Because Carnegie saw it pretty quickly. His adult students, they wanted help with public speaking, sure, but they needed something deeper. They needed, as he put it, still more training in the fine art of getting along with people in everyday business and social contacts. And that realization just shifted everything for him.
From just speaking at people to actually connecting with them.
Precisely. Interpersonal psychology, really.
And the payoff for mastering this fine art, it's huge. Carnegie sets the stakes right at the beginning with that famous John D. Rockefeller quote.
Oh, yeah. The one about dealing with people being like a commodity.
Exactly. As purchasable a commodity as sugar or coffee.
And Rockefeller knew how rare that skill actually was. He said he'd pay more for the ability to deal with people than for any other under the sun.
Wow.
Yeah. So that really establishes the practical relevance for you listening right now.
Yeah.
We're talking about what might be the highest price skill on the market. It's not just about being nice. It's about real competence in, let's call it, human engineering.
What I find fascinating is where this all came from. It wasn't some academic sitting in an ivory tower.
Not at all. It came straight out of a kind of psychological field research.
Sure.
Carnegie prepared like crazy for this book. He read everything, philosophers, psychologists, tons of biographies of leaders. He even hired a researcher for a year and a half just to make sure he covered all the bases.
The real unique part, the origin story, is this laboratory idea.
Yeah.
The book wasn't really written in the usual way. It grew.
It absolutely grew. It came directly out of his courses there in New York at the Carnegie Institute. The students were the test subjects.
Thousands of them, right? Working adults.
Thousands of working adults looking to get ahead. Carnegie would teach a rule, they'd walk out the door, try it immediately in their jobs and their social lives, and then they'd come back and report the results. What worked, what didn't.
So it wasn't just theory. It was this ongoing 15-year field study in applied psychology, getting refined constantly based on actual feedback.
That's it, exactly. It started small, just some rules on a postcard apparently, then it grew into booklets, and finally the book we have today. These aren't just nice ideas, they're documented practices shown to work again and again sometimes, as he said, like magic, even when things got really tense between people.
Okay, let's dive into the core stuff then. Starting with the fundamental techniques for handling people. And interestingly, Carnegie kicks off not with what we should do, but with the big pitfalls to avoid.
Right. And the very first principle sets a really high bar. It's almost absolute. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Which feels so counterintuitive, doesn't it? Our default is often to point out the flaw, thinking that'll fix it. So why did Carnegie insist that's just futile?
Because criticism, it almost never actually works the way you want it to. What it does do is wound a person's pride, their sense of importance. So when someone's criticized, they don't usually go, oh, thank you, I see the light. No, they get defensive. They justify what they did, they rationalize, or worse, they just turn it around and condemn you.
The homing pigeon analogy.
Yeah, criticism always comes back home, as he put it. It just creates resentment.
And he uses these incredibly stark examples of criminal rationalization. We're not talking about colleagues dodging blame here. These are like notorious criminals who genuinely don't see themselves as bad people. It shows you just how deep self-justification runs. Take Two Gun Crowley.
The New York desperado. Killed a policeman. While he's cornered, police all around, he writes this note saying, under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm.
That's unbelievable.
He honestly thought he was the victim, said he was just defending myself.
Even in that extreme situation.
Even then. Or Al Capone, one of the most ruthless gangsters ever. He saw himself as a public benefactor who just got abuse instead of thanks.
Wow.
And Warden Laws from Sing Sing prison, he confirmed it, said very few criminals in Sing Sing actually saw themselves as bad men. They always found some reason, logical or not, to justify why they did what they did.
So the insight there is, if these guys facing prison or worse won't admit fault even to themselves, why on earth would we expect our employee or our kid to suddenly change just because we pointed out their mistake.
It shows you it's usually a pointless exercise, and Carnegie backs this up with history too, especially with leaders showing restraint. Think about Abraham Lincoln.
Right, with his Civil War generals.
Exactly. He had every reason to just tear into McClellan, Pope, Burnside, Hooker, Meade. These guys were constantly letting him down, sometimes incompetently.
You can feel his frustration in his letters.
Totally. But Lincoln mostly held his tongue. He kept coming back to his favorite quote, "Judge not, that ye be not judged."
And that story about the unsent letter to General Meade at Gettysburg,
Yeah.
that really drives it home.
Oh, absolutely. Lincoln was furious. Meade wins this huge victory at Gettysburg, but then Lee's army is trapped, backed up against a swollen river, and Meade just lets him escape.
Lincoln thought the war could have ended right there.
He did, and he wrote this incredibly sharp, scathing letter to Meade, basically accusing him of not getting how big a disaster this failure was.
But he stopped himself.
He stopped. He put the letter aside. He realized sending it would just make him feel better for a moment. It wouldn't make Meade fight better. It would probably just make Meade defensive, maybe even make him resign.
Lose a commander he needed.
Right. So Lincoln concluded, after years of this agony, that sharp criticisms and rebukes almost invariably end in futility. That moment of restraint under immense pressure, that's the lesson.
And we see that applied today, too. The story about the hard hats is a great bridge, isn't it? From not criticizing to finding a positive way.
Yeah, George B. Johnston, the safety guy, he used to just demand workers wear their hard hats.
And got sullen compliance, maybe.
At best. So he changed his whole approach. No more criticism. Instead, he'd just walk up and ask gently, "Is that hat uncomfortable? Or is it not fitting right?" And then he'd quietly remind them that the hat was designed for their protection, to save them from injury.
Appealing to their self-interest, not just laying down the law.
Exactly. Took the condemnation out. And suddenly compliance went way up and the resentment just vanished. Which leads us perfectly into the next principle, because if you stop criticizing, you need to replace it with something.
Right, you need a positive action.
And principle 2 hits the core human driver, the desire to be important.
This is way beyond just basic needs like food or sleep, isn't it? This is what separates us from animals, according to Carnegie. Freud called it the desire to be great.
And the philosopher John Dewey called it the desire to be important. Carnegie argues this is basically the engine driving civilization.
Really?
Yeah, it's what made Lincoln study law by firelight, what drove Dickens to write novels. That hunger for recognition, for appreciation, for feeling like you matter, it fuels almost everything. Great.
But like money or power, that drive can go in very different directions. The contrast between Rockefeller and Dillinger.
Right. It's the how that matters, not the fundamental desire. John D. Rockefeller Sr., he got his feeling of importance by funding hospitals in Peking, helping countless poor people he'd never even meet.
A constructive way.
Totally. Then you have John Dillinger, public enemy number 1. He got his feeling of importance by being notorious. Even when he was hiding from the FBI, he'd apparently boast, "I'm Dillinger." That was his way of feeling significant.
So the need is primal. People will go to weird lengths if they have to.
Sometimes bizarre lengths. Think about Mrs. McKinley, President McKinley's wife. She apparently got her feeling of importance, her power, by making her husband, the president, neglect state affairs to sit with her, soothe her, even go with her to the dentist.
Wow, that's extreme.
It is. And Carnegie points out people will sometimes even develop illnesses, real or imagined, just to get that attention, that feeling of importance. His point is, if people crave it so badly, they might even lose their minds to get it. Imagine the positive power you unlock when you give people honest appreciation.
Okay, so if this desire is so central, how do we actually use this in, say, business or leadership? Charles Schwab seems to be the key example here.
Schwab. First president of U.S. Steel. Earning $1 million a year back when most people made maybe $50 a week.
An unbelievable salary.
Astronomical. And he was paid that not because he knew the absolute most about making steel. He admitted others knew more technically, but purely because of his ability to deal with people. His secret, he said, was simple. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. Basically, find things to genuinely appreciate and don't hold back in expressing it.
But it has to be sincere, right? People can smell flattery a mile off.
Absolutely critical. The appreciation must be genuine. It has to come from the heart out, not just from the teeth out, as Carnegie put it. And ignoring this, the cost of not showing sincere appreciation is huge. He mentions that study about runaway wives.
Where the main reason given was lack of appreciation.
Exactly. It just poisons relationships. And that story about the husband and the 6 red roses.
Oh, where the wife asked him to list 6 things she could do better, basically asking for criticism.
Yeah. And instead of taking the bait, he sends her 6 red roses with a note that said something like, I can't think of 6 things I'd change about you. I love you just the way you are.
And she was floored.
Almost in tears, apparently. Grateful he didn't criticize her like she asked. That one act of pure, sincere appreciation totally shifted the dynamic.
So let's be clear on the line here. Sincere appreciation is the goal. How is that different from flattery? Because flattery feels manipulative.
It's a crucial difference. Appreciation is sincere, it's unselfish. Flattery is the counterfeit. It's selfish, it's insincere, it's shallow. Now, Carnegie admits some people are so starved for that feeling of importance they'll swallow anything. But flattery is ultimately dangerous because it's dishonest. It backfires, people see through it eventually, and you lose trust. The appreciation has to be honest to really work long term.
Okay, that makes sense. And that sets us up for the third big foundational principle, which is about using that deep desire to actually get things done.
Principle 3, arouse in the other person an eager want.
This feels like the practical application, doesn't it? It's the only way, Carnegie says, to get someone to do something willingly without resentment. You have to make them want to do it.
You've got to flip your perspective immediately. Stop talking about what you want and figure out what they want. It's like Henry Ford said, you have to see things from their angle.
Bait the hook to suit the fish.
Exactly. You wouldn't go fishing with strawberries and cream just because you like them. You use worms because that's what the fish wants. It's common sense, but we forget it all the time in dealing with people.
The kindergarten example really brings this to life. Stan Novak's son, Tim, having a total meltdown about going to school.
Right, kicking and screaming, total refusal. So instead of yelling or forcing him, Stan, his wife Lil, and their older son Bob just ignored Tim's tantrum. And they started having this incredibly fun time finger painting.
Making it look like the best thing ever.
Totally. Singing songs, talking about how amazing kindergarten was, all the fun stuff you learned there. So little Tim, seeing all this fun, naturally wants to join in.
And they said no.
They created a barrier. They said, oh no, you have to go to kindergarten first to learn how to finger paint? Boom. They made kindergarten the key to getting what he now desperately wanted.
They aroused the eager want.
Nailed it. The next morning, Tim wakes up early, gets himself dressed, and is found sound asleep in a chair, just waiting excitedly to go to school. No amount of yelling could have done that. Only desire.
And this applies directly to business too, like with that freight terminal letter. How did shifting the focus change things?
The first letter was all about the superintendent's problem. You guys delivering late messes us up. It was a demand.
Focused on his pain.
Completely. The revised letter, it focused entirely on the customer's benefits. It said things like, delivering earlier means your trucks won't get delayed, your freight gets immediate attention, and then there was that nice little touch.
The macaroni.
Yeah. Mentioning that the workers could get home earlier to eat the delicious macaroni and noodles that the customer made, it subtly linked cooperation to the customer's efficiency, their product, their pride.
So the customer now wants to cooperate because it helps them.
Exactly. It served their interests. Same reason Barbara Anderson got interviews at almost every bank she applied to. Her letter didn't say, I need a job. It said, basically, here's how I can help your bank grow and profit. Let me show you. She focused entirely on their wants.
Okay, moving into section 2, the relationship toolkit. These are the 6 ways Carnegie says you can make people genuinely like you. Sort of the daily practices.
Right, the things that build that foundation of goodwill. And it starts with principle 1, become genuinely interested in other people.
The example of Howard Thurston, the magician, is pretty powerful here. His massive success wasn't just about having better tricks.
No, he said himself. Others might have known more technically. His secret weapon was his attitude towards his audience. He genuinely loved them.
He'd say to himself.
Over and over before going on stage. I love my audience. I love my audience. He felt truly grateful they came, truly obligated to give them his absolute best. And that genuine interest, that affection, apparently radiated out. People felt he cared about them as individuals, not just as a faceless crowd or suckers.
And you see that sincerity work in business too, like with Mr. Walters, the salesman, trying to get info from that cagey company president.
Yeah, the president was giving him nothing, being super vague. Then Walters remembered hearing the guy collected stamps for his young son.
A personal detail.
A tiny detail. So Walters comes back the next day, not to push business, but with some stamps for the collection. And they just talked for half an hour, only about stamps and the president's son, purely focused on the president's interest.
And the result?
The president, apparently just delighted by this genuine interest, then voluntarily spent over an hour giving Walters all the info he needed, answering questions Walters hadn't even asked yet. The genuine connection just dissolved the resistance.
Amazing. Principle 2 seems almost too simple. Smile.
Charles Schwab didn't think it was simple. He said his smile was worth $1 million. And psychologists back it up. A real smile signals warmth, openness. People who smile tend to manage, teach, sell more effectively. It just makes you more approachable.
And what about the unseen smile? The idea that it comes through even on the phone?
Oh, definitely. The tone changes. There's that story of the manager, Robert Cryer, recruiting this highly qualified PhD candidate. The candidate later said he chose Cryer's smaller company over bigger ones simply because Cryer's voice sounded genuinely glad to hear from him. Sounded like he really wanted him on the team. The other manager sounded cold, businesslike. That smile in the voice, that warmth, that was the tiebreaker.
You really can hear it, can't you?
Okay.
Okay, principle 3. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
It sounds basic, but it's profound. A name is uniquely personal. Remembering it, using it correctly, it's a powerful, subtle compliment. Forgetting it, or worse, misspelling it, that's a real disadvantage.
Jim Farley, the guy who helped get FDR elected.
Yeah, he apparently claimed he could call 50,000 people by their first names. He had a whole system, learn the full name, family details, business, political views, lock it all in.
That's incredible dedication.
It is. But that level of personalized attention, remembering someone's name, it directly feeds that desire to feel important, to be recognized as an individual. The story of Nicodemus Papadoulos really hits hard.
The salesman, Sid Levy.
Levy knew everyone called his customer Nick, but Levy made a point of learning and using his full name, Nicodemus Papadoulos. And the reaction...
He started crying.
Yeah. Papadoulos was deeply moved. Said that in 15 years living in America, nobody had ever bothered to learn and use his real name.
Wow. That just shows the power of simple recognition and respect. And Carnegie himself used this strategically, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. When Andrew Carnegie wanted to sell steel rails to the Pennsylvania Railroad, whose president was J. Edgar Thompson, he built a massive new steel mill in Pittsburgh and named it the Edgar Thompson Steel Works. Not so subtle, maybe, but effective. So when the Pennsylvania Railroad needed rails, where do you suppose Thompson bought them?
From the mill named after him, I assume?
You got it. Masterful application of the principle.
Okay, principle 4. This one might be the hardest, requires real self-control. Be a good listener, encourage others to talk about themselves.
Yeah, T.S. Eliot apparently said nothing is so flattering as that, meaning concentrated attention. In today's world, just stopping everything and truly, genuinely listening. That's probably the highest compliment you can pay someone.
Fulfills that need for importance again.
Big time. And it's crucial when people are upset or just need to get something off their chest.
That letter from the father who realized his constant nagging was ruining his relationship with his son. That's heartbreaking.
It really is. Criticizing the wet towels, the shoes on the floor, elbows on the table. He realized he was judging his young son by adult standards, and in doing so, he was crushing the boy's natural affection, that spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me.
So he decided to stop.
He resolved to bite his tongue, to just chum with the boy, as he put it. To listen, be present, stop finding fault. He chose the relationship over the tidiness.
And the power of just listening, even in conflict, is shown by that telephone company troubleshooter.
Oh, yeah, the guy dealing with the cantankerous customer who was just raging about the phone company.
What did the troubleshooter do? Argue back? Defend the company?
Nope. He just listened for nearly 3 hours, let the guy vent, spew all his poison, just offered sympathy, agreed with his points where he could, didn't interrupt, didn't argue.
3 hours? That's intense patience.
Incredible. But by simply listening, he let the customer feel heard, feel important. That was a first step.
Did it actually solve the problem?
Eventually. The troubleshooter came back 3 more times, mostly just to listen and sympathize more. The customer gradually calmed down, became almost friendly. He even made the troubleshooter a member of his personal telephone subscribers protective association. The actual technical problem wasn't even fixed until the 4th visit. Listening built the bridge first.
That's amazing. And the last one in this section, principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
If you want people to find you fascinating, ironically, you need to talk mostly about them and what they find fascinating. Carnegie proved this himself at that dinner party with the botanist.
He just focused entirely on the plant guy.
Completely ignored everyone else, apparently. Just locked onto the botanist, asked him questions about exotic plants, weird experiments, even potatoes. He was genuinely curious about the man's passion and just let him talk.
And Carnegie barely said a word about himself.
Hardly anything. But afterwards, the botanist told the host that Carnegie was a most stimulating conversationalist. Why? Because Carnegie tapped into the botanist's passion and made him feel interesting and important.
So find their hobby horse and let them ride it.
Pretty much. Same thing worked for Henry Duvernoy, the baker trying to sell bread to that hotel manager. 4 years, no look.
Right.
Then Duvernoy finds out the manager's real passion is the society, the hotel greeters of America, and he was the president. So Duvernoy goes in, and this time talks only about the hotel greeters, asks questions, gets the manager talking excitedly about it for half an hour. And before Duvernoy leaves, the manager has actually sold Duvernoy a membership in the greeters.
Turn the tables completely.
Exactly. And a few days later, the hotel steward calls Duvernoy to place a bread order. He finally got the business, not by talking about bread, but by talking about the manager's passion.
All right, let's shift gears to the final, maybe most advanced section. How to win people to your way of thinking and the principles of leadership. This is where we get into handling disagreements and influencing decisions.
Yeah, and principle 1 here is tough for a lot of us, especially if we like being right. Avoid arguments. Carnegie flat out says, you can't win an argument.
That feels wrong, doesn't it? If I have the facts, the logic, why can't I win the argument?
You might win the point intellectually, you might prove the other person is wrong, but you lose something much bigger, their goodwill. You've likely hurt their pride, made them feel defensive or inferior. So even if they outwardly concede, inwardly they resent you. So, was it really a win? Carnegie learned this the hard way at that banquet for Sir Ross Smith.
Where he corrected the guy about this Shakespeare quote.
Yeah. Carnegie knew the quote, there's a divinity that shapes our ends, was Shakespeare, not the Bible, as the speaker claimed. He was certain.
And he called him out on it.
He did. They asked their friend Frank Gammond, a Shakespeare expert, to settle it. Gammond knew Carnegie was right, but what did he do?
Kicked him under the table.
Right under the table. And then said aloud, yes, the gentleman is right. It is from the Bible. Saved the speaker's face.
Protecting the relationship over the fact. The acute angle.
That's what Gammond called it later. Why prove to a man he is wrong? Is that going to make him like you? Always avoid the acute angle. Carnegie realized he'd made the storyteller look bad and embarrassed his friend, all just to prove a trivial point. The cost was way too high.
It takes serious ego control, like Ben Franklin learning to stop being such an arguer.
Yeah, apparently as a young man, Franklin was impossible, always contradicting people. Then an old Quaker friend called him out on it.
And Franklin actually changed.
Dramatically, he decided to ban absolute words, certainly, undoubtedly, from his vocabulary. Instead, he started using softer, more modest phrases like, I conceived, or I imagine, or it appears to me. That shift towards intellectual humility, Carnegie argues, was key to his later diplomatic success.
That humility flows right into principle 2, which is what you do instead of arguing. Never say, you're wrong.
It's just a direct attack. As soon as you say, you're wrong, you've challenged their judgment, their pride, bang. The shutters come down, they're not going to listen, they're going to dig in and defend themselves.
Even if you have irrefutable proof.
Doesn't matter. You've hurt their feelings, you've attacked their self-respect. The facts become secondary to defending their ego.
Okay, so if someone is demonstrably wrong and you need to correct them for, say, a project to succeed, how do you do it without triggering that you're wrong defense?
There's a kind of magic opening phrase Carnegie suggests. It's all about radical humility. You say something like, now look, I thought otherwise, but I may be wrong. I frequently am, and if I am wrong, I want to be put right. Let's examine the facts.
Ah, okay. It's cooperative, not confrontational.
Exactly. Who's going to object to, let's examine the facts? You immediately disarm them because you're not attacking. You're inviting collaboration to find the truth together. You've shown respect for their opinion, even while disagreeing.
Like Harold Ranke, the Dodge dealer handling customer complaints.
Yeah, he used to argue with customers who felt ripped off, and it just drove business away. He completely changed his tune. He started saying things like, our dealership has made so many mistakes that I am frequently ashamed. We may have erred in your case. Tell me about it.
Instantly validates their feeling.
Totally. It fulfills their need for importance, lets them vent. And then because they feel respected, they usually become much more reasonable. Ranke found he settled disputes more easily and even got more business and thank yous just by dropping the you're wrong approach.
Okay, but what if you're the one who's actually wrong? and maybe the other person knows it. Principle 3 is about getting ahead of the condemnation. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and empathetically.
Right. If you know you messed up, don't wait to be called out. Jump in first. Admit it quickly. Admit it clearly. Admit it emphatically. Do it with enthusiasm, even.
Why does that work so well?
Because it completely takes the fight out of the other person. If they were gearing up to criticize you, your quick confession steals their thunder. They don't get the satisfaction of pointing out your error.
It deflates the situation.
Instantly. It clears the air, shows responsibility, and often makes the other person feel magnanimous and forgiving. There's usually more fun in attacking someone who's defensive than someone who's already condemning themselves.
Carnegie's own story about walking his dog, Rex, in Forest Park without a leash. That's a perfect example.
It really is. He knew he was breaking the rule. The first time, a mounted policeman caught him and really laid into him. The second time he saw the same policeman approaching, Carnegie didn't wait. He ran up to the officer first and essentially said, "Officer, you've caught me red-handed. I'm guilty. I have no excuses. I know I deserve a fine." He condemned himself before the officer could say a word.
So the officer's whole mindset shifted.
Completely. His need for importance, his authority, was satisfied by Carnegie's immediate admission. So instead of chewing him out again, the officer softened right up, said something like, "Now I know it's tempting to let a little dog like that run," and ended up telling Carnegie to just let Rex run over the hill there where I can't see him and we'll forget all about it.
By admitting fault first, he made the officer want to be lenient.
Exactly. It turned confrontation into cooperation. And that kind of nobility, taking responsibility, is echoed in that incredible moment with Robert E. Lee after Gettysburg.
After Pickett's charge failed catastrophically.
Yes. His army was shattered, the survivors straggling back, expecting blame. Lee rode out to meet them, completely exposed, and said, "All this has been my fault. I and I alone have lost this battle."
Wow. Taking it all on himself.
Instantly. That act of profound self-condemnation, that humility from their revered leader, it didn't crush his men further. It actually boosted their morale and cemented their loyalty. It was sublime leadership through admitting fault.
Okay, let's wrap up with the specific leadership techniques Carnegie outlines for changing people's behavior or attitudes without causing offense. Again, it seems like protecting their pride is key.
Always. Technique 1 is often called the sandwich method, but Carnegie puts it nicely. Praise first. The barber lathers before shaving. Start with honest, sincere praise before you bring up the area that needs improvement.
Makes the criticism easier to swallow.
Much easier. Lincoln did this masterfully in that letter to General Hooker. He starts off calling Hooker a brave and skillful soldier, acknowledging his strengths before gently addressing the things he wasn't satisfied with, like Hooker's political ambition and undermining behavior.
The praise provides a cushion.
Right. Technique 2 is about subtlety. Call attention to mistakes indirectly. And a key part of this is avoiding the word but.
Because but negates everything positive you just said.
Yeah.
Like, you did a great job, but erases the great job.
Precisely. It makes the praise feel like just a setup for the criticism. Carnegie suggests swapping but for and. So instead of, "You did great work, but the spelling needs fixing," you'd say something like, "You did great work, and if you keep refining the details like spelling, it'll be truly outstanding."
Shifts it from criticism to encouragement for further improvement.
Exactly. It keeps the focus positive. Sergeant Harley Kaiser telling his reservists they needed haircuts. He didn't order them. He just said, "Men, you are leaders. You lead by example. I'm going to get my haircut today, even though it's shorter than some of yours."
Point made indirectly, appealing to their role as leaders.
And apparently they went and got haircuts. Technique 3 is huge for effective leadership. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Why is that more effective?
Because it respects the other person's intelligence and initiative. Orders can breed resentment. Questions invite collaboration. It makes people feel like they're part of the decision, that the idea is at least partly theirs.
Saves their pride, gives them that feeling of importance.
Right. Ian McDonald, the general manager with that huge urgent order his shop probably couldn't handle. Instead of just yelling, "Rush this job, work overtime," he called a meeting. He explained the situation, the opportunity, the challenge, and then asked them, "Is there any way we could handle this? Can anyone think of different ways to process it through the shop that might make it possible?"
Putting the problem to them.
Exactly. And what happened? The employees themselves came up with the ideas, figured out a plan, and then enthusiastically insisted they could take the order. Why? Because it was their plan now. They owned it.
Much better than just following orders.
Way better buy-in. And the final leadership technique really leverages that desire for importance. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
Like setting a positive expectation.
Exactly. If you tell someone you believe they possess a certain positive trait, they will often make extraordinary efforts to live up to that reputation. It taps into their pride and their desire to be seen in that positive light. Georgette LeBlanc told that story about Marie the dishwasher.
The young woman working as a scullery maid.
Yeah, low self-esteem, humble job. LeBlanc looked at her one day and said something profound. Marie, you do not know what treasures are within you.
Just that one sentence.
Apparently, it changed everything for Marie. She started seeing herself differently, started taking care of herself, carrying herself differently, believing she was this tabernacle of unseen marvels. And a few months later, she announced she was marrying the chef's nephew and declared, I'm going to be a lady. She lived up to the potential LeBlanc saw in her.
That's incredible. And we see the same thing in the classroom with Tommy T, the bad boy.
Mrs. Ruth Hopkins, the teacher, was warned this kid was trouble. But first day, she looks him right in the eye and says, Tommy, I understand you are a natural leader. I'm going to depend on you to help me make this class the best class in the 4th grade this year.
Gave him a reputation.
A positive one. And what happened? Tommy lived up to it, became one of her most helpful, cooperative students. She gave him something noble to strive for.
Wow. Okay, so this whole deep dive into Carnegie, it really shows his approach isn't just a list of tips or tricks. It's really a whole philosophy, a new way of life, as he called it.
It truly is. And it's not easy. It takes real discipline, conscious effort, day after day. But those two foundational shifts we talked about are key.
Right. First, stop the negative, the criticism, the complaining.
Cut that out. And second, actively feed that fundamental human hunger, the desire to feel important through genuine appreciation, and by consistently focusing on what the other person wants.
And going back to Rockefeller, that ability to actually do this, to deal with people effectively, it really might be the highest priced ability under the sun, more valuable than just technical skill alone.
It seems so. And what's fascinating is that while all these principles are aimed at influencing others, they all start with you. They demand pretty deep self-analysis first. Like Confucius said, don't complain about the snow on your neighbor's roof when your own doorstep is unclean.
Yeah, every single principle requires you to manage your own reactions, your own ego, before you even think about the other person.
Exactly. Which brings us nicely to our final thought, circling right back to how Carnegie developed this stuff through self-education. He practiced what he preached, applying a really rigorous system of self-analysis to his own interactions.
He actually scheduled time for it.
Yeah, he said he'd set aside part of every Saturday evening. He'd get out his engagement book, review the meetings, the conversations he'd had that week, and ask himself some tough questions.
Like what?
What mistakes did I make that time? What did I do that was right? And in what way could I have improved my performance? And crucially, what lessons can I learn from that experience?
Wow. He actually admitted doing that often made him very unhappy.
Oh, yeah. He said he was often astonished at his own blunders, which must have been tough, right? Considering that powerful urge we all have to justify ourselves like we saw with Crowley and Capone, to face your own mistakes square on.
That takes real commitment to growth.
But Carnegie insisted that this process, this weekly self-review, continued year after year, did more for me than any other one thing I have ever attempted. It was his key to getting better.
So the final challenge for you listening right now is really this. Can you commit to that kind of honest, scheduled, maybe weekly review of your own interactions with people?
Can you really look back, identify your own mistakes without flinching, celebrate the small wins, and figure out how to improve next time? Even if that self-assessment makes you a bit uncomfortable sometimes?
Because that ongoing effort to master these principles in your own life, to honestly appraise how you are doing and applying them.
That self-education process, Carnegie believed, is maybe the most valuable learning you can undertake. It pays dividends far beyond just getting along better with people.